What up, y'all? This is Alex Clark-Youngblood. Today we have our fourth episode. My father, quote-unquote father, for lack of a better term, the man who is half of my genetics. This is a profound one for me personally. The content of it's pretty interesting. I wanted more answers. I wanted a more forthcoming subject when I did this interview, because quite frankly, I think this is probably the person who inspired this entire effort on my part. I know nothing about this man, and I desired to get to know who he is, and that side of my family kind of inspired what ended up being kind of a cross-country journey to record these interviews over the past few years. But after sitting down with him and talking to him and making an effort to get to know him, I didn't feel, at least on a personal level, that he was particularly forthcoming. Y'all can judge for yourself how forthcoming or accurate you think he is. I don't think he... Anyway, there's some interesting content in this interview regardless that has nothing to do with he and I's relationship or the dynamic between he and my mom or, all of our little family. There's some fascinating stuff just about his upbringing and his life. He's lived an interesting life, and while I certainly don't agree with the way he has gone about, let's say, the second half of it, there's some interesting content in there regardless. Just some quick backstory, and I apologize for the baby sound in the background here as I record this, but I think it's kind of fitting and ironic because the reason I have a baby in the background right now, it's not my child, it's a friend of my child, but I'm in charge of raising this little life form, at least Monday through Friday. And a reason I'm doing that is because I want practice being a father. I know I want to be a father, and when that time comes, I want to be able to hit the ground running and be the best possible father I can be. And the impetus for that is the fact that I never had a father growing up myself. And it's taken me a long time to get to this point of desire to have kids, or this journey of trying to become the best man I can possibly be. But, I have my lack of father and the broken person I see him as kind of inspiration to be a better man myself, which is why I'm sitting with a 13-month-old climbing on my couch as we speak. Anyway, just quick backstory. This has been touched on in previous interviews, but just quick backstory of my relationship, or lack thereof, with my dad. He and my mom met in Monroe, Louisiana. She was pregnant soon into their relationship. He would have preferred to have an abortion. Fortunately for me, my mom refused, and I was born. And my mom took me away from Louisiana to move to Atlanta soon after I was born to start a life on her own with her two children. Then at that time, as a single mother of two children, they made an effort to get the band back together right around when I was 2 years old, and my mom ended up pregnant again with my younger sister. But my father dipped out and left a picture before my younger sister was even born, and essentially we never saw him again. We visited a few times throughout childhood, a handful of times. I remember going to Louisiana or him visiting Atlanta. I have vague memories of, and meeting my siblings on that side and things like that. But I really didn't know much about the guy ever, really, until I did this over the past couple of years, going through these interviews. But as I say towards the end of this interview, I've held a lot of resentment toward this guy for a long time, and I don't want those feelings anymore. I don't want to hold any resentment to this against this guy anymore. I want to free myself of that emotion, and I want to free him of any negative emotion, if there is any there. If there's any sort of emotion at all there with regards to his the children whom he doesn't have a relationship with. Anyway, so that's that. I would like to proceed forward, unattached to this, and I'm open to any sort of loving or positive relationship that anyone wants to mutually develop with me. So I'm open to that potentiality with him as well. So anyway, without any further ado, I apologize for the little bit of a long soliloquy there, but I think it's important for the context of this interview. So without any further ado, here is the man who made me, in part, Hugh Youngblood Sr. Alrighty, so let's just start from the beginning then. let's start, with your birth. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Okay. I was actually born, my family, my mom and dad and I were living, my mom and dad were living in Sicily Island, which is a little town between Winsboro and Natchez, Louisiana. And I was born in, born in St. Francis Hospital in Monroe, though.
That's where I was born.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure were.
Same place. Mm-hmm. After you were born in Monroe, did you immediately come back here to the plantation?
No. We lived in Sicily Island until I was about 4 years old. My family and I lived in Sicily Island until I was about 4 years old. My dad was a partner in a lumber company there. But when I was 4, we came to live with my grandfather and grandmother Hill, who owned the plantation, and we just stayed with. We were living here with them from that point on, and until I went through school. So I basically grew up here from the time I was 4.
What was life like here on the plantation? Growing up here. It's kind of an isolated environment, isn't it? What do you remember about your childhood on the plantation?
It was great. I had a great time. I had plenty of people to play with because there were a lot of people living on the place that were working on the plantation, and all of them had kids. Okay. So I had plenty of playmates.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
So you weren't bored at all?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, today it's kind of an isolated place. It's just you and Preston here, but I guess you were born in 46, correct? So I guess back in the day, it was more operational and more active.
Yeah. I mean, it was always something going. I mean, it was dozens of people around every day. I mean, there were people. I guess in the house there were or at least 3 or 4 people, ladies working, and then in the yard there were 3 or 4 people. And then in the fields, there were dozens of people.
So they were working all of these fields all around the plantation?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Okay.
And if you notice the bell out there in the yard, that's a dinner bell. So it was rung at 12 o'clock every day to let everybody in the fields know it was time for lunch.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
What was being grown back then?
Cotton.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Exclusively cotton?
Everything cotton, yeah.
Everything cotton. Yeah. And it was like that. Me and Preston and I talked about this yesterday. I guess the plantation, the actual house itself was built in the late 1700s?
1793.
1793. Mm-hmm. But then it came into our family's possession in 1910, I think we
No, I'm not really sure of that date. Preston probably has it down more than I because he's done research at the courthouse on it. So, but talking about people, they were, everybody pretty much were job specific. For instance, in the house, there was one lady assigned to do nothing but polish silver.
That was her job.
Every day. Keep silver polished.
Wow. So you had like houseworkers, like maids.
Yeah. And then I know there was one guy outside that worked outside named John Fox. And his job was to do nothing but take care of the chickens. And every day, I mean, when we'd have had dinner, he would catch a chicken and wring its neck.
Oh, wow.
Clean it and all. So, I mean, like on Sundays, a lot of times the preacher would come and join us for dinner. And John Fox would have one chicken kill 2 chickens, one chicken for the family and the other one just for the preacher.
And this preacher was from what denomination?
This was my grandmother was Baptist. Went to the Baptist church.
So this is the Baptist church that was in Columbia?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the few times that I've come and visited and kind of talked to people around Columbia, it seems like our family, the Hill family, I guess originally Mimi's parents owned the house, and then the Youngblood family later on, as it was more known as the plantation of the Youngbloods. Was this the biggest plantation or farm in the area? Because it seems like the family was well known. anytime I've come to Columbia and visited, and people ask who I am, and I mention the last name Youngblood, it seems like people are very well aware.
Well, this is a small place. Everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So it's not that big a deal. But I'm sure there were several plantations, working plantations. But what's significant about this is the oldest plantation on the Washita River.
Oh, so this is the oldest in the area.
Oldest. And then, but there were actually, I think, a total of 5 plantations that were Spanish land grants that were given to, I think, this one was given to the Brest family, B-R-E-S, and that's how Breston Plantation gets its name. But there were actually 5 places along the river. This happened to be this is the only one still standing. There's one a couple miles up the road, north of here, on the river, called Sino Plantation. It also burned, but they completely rebuilt it to the original likings of the plantation before the house before it burned.
Mm-hmm.
So
from in the late 1700s onward until I think Bruce and I gathered right around 1910, our family had owned it. It was an operational plantation. That's what it was. From what we understand, it was like growing cotton.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I really don't know what the story was about how my family acquired it. I never really got that. But I think Preston had done, like I said, done more research than I have.
Yeah, he seemed to know good background about it. So at the time or during that, prior to our family owning it, it must have been operated by slaves. And then when you came to live on it, were there people? The people that were working on the plantation, were they living on the property, or were they living elsewhere and coming to work?
Yeah, we probably had, I would say, probably 15 houses.
15?
You have 15 families living on the plantation.
Oh wow! I didn't realize it was that extensive.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody, each family had their own house, and but yeah, there was that many.
I remember those 2 houses that used to be up front near the entrance. What happened to all, those? No longer there either. So what happened to all the 50?
They eventually got torn down or whatever to make room for make more room for growing crops. And in about the time that I was growing up, people started moving away from here to get jobs. I mean, I think in the 60s, more or less, started moving away here. Get jobs in the factories in Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis and things like that. So little by little people moved away.
Do you think that was tied to the civil rights movement at the time? Because all of the workers, I'm assuming, were black. Were they when you were growing up?
No, I don't think it had anything to do with that at all. It was just that there was more. As the original families maybe had 6 or 8 kids in a family, as the original family would stay, but as the kids would grow up, they would hear about things. You could go to Detroit and get a job in a factory up there. So I guess they just that was just the trend.
Right.
But nothing to do with civil rights at all, because these people were really happy, and the ones that are still around here, they love to come back here and talk about what a good time they had growing up here and all that. So everybody it was like one big family.
Okay. What was the racial dynamic back then? Do you remember like a clear separation between black and white and what was permitted, and like your parents' attitude or your grandparents' attitude?
Well, I mean, it was no prejudice. I mean, it was it wasn't anything such as prejudice. It was just like tradition, I guess, or the way things were. Black had were together and the whites were together. It was not, but it wasn't anything malicious about it. It's just the way things were, and everybody was extremely happy. I mean, the blacks had their own school, and the whites had their own school, and the black school was just as many many ways superior to the white school. But no, everybody got good education. Everybody was happy, well fed. We had a garden, and everybody had just helped themselves to the garden. We always killing cows and pigs and chickens. Everybody had just could help themselves to anything they wanted.
Wow! So you remember like actual slaughtering of animals and stuff?
Yeah, I mean it was just part of the farm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah, and we had a house right out there called the smokehouse where we'd when they would kill a hog or whatever, that's where they would smoke the meats. So
okay.
It's called the smokehouse.
And you went to school, so you moved here when you were 4, and you went to school, I believe from our last interview, you said starting around like 6th, around first grade?
Yeah, first grade.
And that was in the town of Columbia itself?
In the town of Columbia, and there was one school, Columbia School, and it was grades 1 through 12.
Everybody in one school.
Right, and there were about 25, 30 kids in each grade. Everybody went through school together.
Right.
The whole group of people in my grade, just first grade, second grade, we were all in the same class.
How large was your class?
About 25 or 30.
25 to 30, first grade through 12?
Right, but each one would have, there were 2 first grades, 2 second grades, 2 thirds. Every grade had two different classes.
So what was your graduating class from high school? Well, how many people do you think were in it when you graduated high school?
Well, see, different dynamic there. When I was in the 12th grade, there were, I think, 5 schools in the parish: Columbia, Grayson, Kelly, Hebert, whatever. And then they built a consolidated high school, which is Caldwell Parish High School, and we were the first graduating class of Caldwell Parish High School. So there, in that case, there were about 100 students in our graduating class.
Okay.
Big graduating.
Everybody consolidated into that high school. That's the same high school that Caroline, Bub, and Preston went to, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you were the first one to graduate from that. Wow. But when you went to school, let's see, you would have started in like 52, 53.
Yeah.
And means you would have graduated high school
64.
64. Did you ever go to school with black people?
Mm-mm.
No. They had a separate...
that wasn't the thing. I mean, that's sort of you wouldn't ever think about it.
Right.
White people wouldn't think about it. Black people wouldn't think about
That's
it.
the way it was.
Nobody even wanted to. I mean, it wasn't any big deal.
Right.
Whites had their own school. Blacks had their own school. So
the black schools in Columbia as well. It's just a separate school in Columbia, or is it out?
It's called Union Central. It's out in between Columbia and Grayson.
Does it still exist?
Yeah, it's now an elementary school.
Oh, okay. You told some wild stories the last time around about things that you experienced that did seem like overt racism. Some wild stuff about like hangings at the courthouse and things like that. Can you rehash some of those stories and fish fries?
Yeah,
I think that's incredible.
Yeah, well, okay, it seemed incredible to you, but I didn't think anything about it.
But it'll be incredible to an audience.
Well, whatever, whatever. No, I think I was recalling you one Saturday night. My grandparents, my mom and dad were doing something, but my grandparents were invited to a fish fry at another plantation. So I remember going, and it's a big social gathering. But the real purpose, I get not entertainment at the event, but the purpose of the event was there was a hanging. It was one of the people. I don't know what the situation was that why he was to be hanged, but apparently he did something. So there was they had a hanging at the fish fry. But it was, there were black people there serving fish.
Really?
Yeah, black people entertaining. They had gospel groups singing and everything, just like at any other event. But one of the at the event, one of the things just happened to be a hanging during at the fish fry.
Oh, wow. So it's like this social gathering from people around the town, different families.
Yeah, it would come to the hanging. Now, that's not that much different from like when they would have a hanging at the courthouse. I remember when I was in Cub Scouts, I guess about third grade or something, we met, our scout troop, scout leader said, okay, we're going down to the courthouse today because they're having a hanging. So, and it looked like everybody in the parish was there, with blankets on the ground and everything. And anyhow, that was just a sort of a normal kind of event.
The Boy Scout troop would go down for the hanging.
The scout troop they just took us down to the hanging because it was a big social event, and we just joined the rest of the crowd.
And other townspeople would come around and just gather around. And that was just like the person being hung had apparently committed some crime, and
apparently so. In other words, it was more illegal. I guess went through the court process. If it was done at the courthouse,
right?
Then that was just a punishment for the crime. Now I don't know. Again, I don't know what the details were about the hanging at the fish fry, but that was probably more informal,
right?
But related to that, someone was talking about it yesterday. When I was going through school, grade school, high school, every Thursday night there would be a Klan meeting at the high school football field.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. At the Caldwell Parish High School?
At the high school football field, right. And, Thursday night was the Klan meeting.
Wow.
And there would be, everybody would have on their white robes and everything. And of course, I never knew who was there because everybody had on a white hood and a white robe.
Right.
And they would, burn at the goalpost. They would have crosses if they burned.
Wow.
And that was public high school.
And that was every Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Would they give like speeches? Or?
I don't know. See, kids would go down and play.
Right.
Just like at a ball game or whatever. Little kids would just go around and play. But I can remember going, but I can't really remember anything specific about it. I just went down to play with my friends.
Right. Just a social gathering.
A social gathering, yeah.
Were any of our family members that you can remember, like active members of the Klan or anything like that?
No, but not that I know of. But have you ever seen the Klan swords?
I've seen them, yeah. They're there. That must be from our family then, though.
If they're here, I guess they are. So, there are a couple Klan swords in the hall.
Yeah, I remember seeing those when I would come visit as a little kid. I thought it was so cool. I was like, oh, wow, it's a real sword. Mm-hmm. And I think it was either you or Bub that I was picking them up one day, or one of my siblings was showing me the swords. And it's a sword. I was 5 years old. I thought it was awesome. And then one of y'all told me the story about it, and
well, I tell you, let's run. Let me go run and get one.
Okay.
And I'll show you. Okay? Go ahead.
Cool.
Okay, the way it's the Klan sword is because of the cross.
Okay.
Christian cross.
I'll have to take a picture of this and put it up.
Okay.
Well, yeah, so it's shaped. Obviously, the people listening can't hear, but yeah, it's shaped exactly like a cross. It's got a metal sheath. Got a tip of it looks like an eagle figure at the end of the sheath. At the head, it's got a knight. I got Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, I believe what they're called. White handle. It's like maybe
looks like ivory.
Yeah, ivory. And you take it out. Wow, it's just a skinny sword. So I guess, was this part, do you remember this being part of like the outfit, the part of the robe?
Oh, I have no idea. I never thought about it. The only time I saw the swords was where they are now.
Wow. But these have been here as long as you can remember?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Incredible piece of history. Dark piece of history, but still fascinating nonetheless. Wow, okay. Well, that was good. That's a good start to the pod. There was some fascinating stories. So when you look back on your childhood, and let's say like pre-high school, when you're a child, how do you look back on it? Do you look back on it fondly? Do you look back? What's your emotional response when you reflect back on it?
I always had a good time.
Okay.
Yeah, I always had a good time. And after I started first grade and got into school, I had plenty of friends,
Would you have friends from school that would come to the plantation to play?
Sure.
So you had not only the black kids that you're playing with that lived on the plantation, but you also had friends coming from school. What? I was thinking about this. I didn't ask you this last time we talked. What were your dreams as a child? Like, do you ever remember having like dreams of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Well, growing up in a small town and on a plantation like this, do you remember what you like aspired to be when you were an adult?
No, nothing specific.
Okay.
Nothing specific. But I didn't know that.
And then you started in high school around. You said you graduated in '64.
Mm-hmm.
What was high school life like? Kind of like adolescence, post puberty. How do you reflect back on that?
Well, just you have these certain set of people that you go to school with, that you associate with, and thing that strikes me as different then is that there, as far as places, there were no fast foods, of course.
Right.
There was a Dairy Queen.
There was Dairy Queen in Columbia?
Dairy Queen in Columbia, and then there was one restaurant on top of the hill, and but that was it. Everybody would have dinners at home. They would have lunch at home, a breakfast, dinner, supper at home, and there was no. Everybody now just gets fast food,
right?
But the difference is, when I was growing up, I can't recall any. Well, we had one fat boy in our class and one fat girl, and we weren't mean to them, but
they stood out.
They stood out. Now, if you look at the people around here, everybody's fat. 90% of them.
Yeah, I went to the grocery store yesterday, and that kind of drew my attention as well.
Right, the girls, I say, have that Columbia look. But one of my friends said they that dog tick look.
Yeah, it's not good. But it seems like you're taking steps to address that and kind of mitigate that happening to yourself. You seem pretty disciplined about your health.
I'm not, after I got graduated from high school, all that. I was away for 30 years, so
right.
I didn't necessarily take up on the habits of local people.
Right. You escaped a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about in high school. What was your let's go to social, because you kind of touched on that a little bit. What was your social life like in high school?
I had a good time. Now, the only thing that was different is that I didn't, I'll put it this way, I wasn't encouraged to go out with girls.
Okay.
And it just kind of, it wasn't anything specific. I just knew that I shouldn't do that.
And where was that directive coming from?
That's from my mother.
Okay.
And so they didn't want me associated with any girls. And I remember my mother saying, we're, meaning my mom and my dad, we're the only ones you'll ever need.
Wow.
So,
do you think that was their expectation for your entire life? That they wanted you to live in their house and be their little boy for your entire life?
Well, not necessarily live in the house, but they definitely needed to let me know that I needed them.
Right. Mm-hmm. They wanted. Do you think they were trying to instill a sense of dependence on them?
Well, I'll put it this way. Let's just talk about.
You don't have to be politically correct. You can speak freely.
No. What I'm thinking, I'm just trying to think this through. for instance, like for my junior senior prom, I didn't. Well, I'll put it this way: my cousin Catherine and Monroe, who is about my age, was selected to be my date for the prom.
Wow! So you had to go to the prom with your cousin?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was just. She was selected for me.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying that in the last interview. But then during the senior prom, didn't your band get to play?
Yeah, I played for my senior prom, so that didn't get to be. But like when my friends and I would go out, in high school or whatever, on Friday, Saturday night, wherever we were, or at the Dairy Queen or whatever, I would look over behind the shoulder, and there was my mom and dad watching over me.
Wow! So
they would show up. They would more or less follow me wherever I went.
So they would follow you to like hanging out with your friends.
I don't know. I mean, and even when I was playing in the band, all of a sudden, my drummer would say, "Hey, your parents over there."
Wow.
But I think just going a little bit further, when Preston's mom and I were thinking about getting married, I said I knew that was going to be I didn't even want to think about it, what the consequences would be. So what Julia and I did, I was
Julia being your first wife,
right? And this was after I was in business in Monroe and everything, so I was about 30 years old. But there was a trade show, a music trade show that I needed. We were going to in Chicago, so she and I stopped in Nashville on the way to Chicago, and my friend Doug, who was a seminary student, married us there. It happened to be in a funeral home.
So you eloped of sorts. Was that?
I guess you would say that, and then. But the problem then is, how in the world am I going to break this news to my folks? Because I knew it wasn't going to be good.
What was that the plan, or had she gotten pregnant? Why was that?
No. We just at some point we decided we wanted to be married, but I knew there was going to be I didn't know what the consequences would be for me.
Right. So your mom, was it primarily? Let's talk about that. How would you describe your relationship with your parents growing up?
They would constantly criticize me about everything.
Very critical.
Very critical. And then I remember we took a 10-day vacation to Colorado, New Mexico and Colorado in a car. And then I was subject to be confined with them in a car for 10 days. One criticism from my mom, one from my dad. One from my mom, one from my dad. And then when we got back, I was really sick. I mean, I didn't know what was wrong. I was really sick. So,
like physically ill, mentally ill?
I didn't know. I felt physically ill. But they took me to the doctor, and he gave me tranquilizers.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, and I don't know what the conversation between the doctor, my mama and dad were, but they said, my mom says, well, he wants you to see this Dr. Monroe, a specialist. And I said, what kind of specialist? And she said, well, he's a diagnostician. A diagnostician.
What is that?
I said, I didn't know.
Sounds very cryptic.
I didn't know that he's a diagnostician. But so my dad was instructed. So my mom would instruct my dad to do things. My my dad was instructed to take me to the diagnostician. So, and it was somewhere in North Side of Monroe, North, 2nd, 3rd, 4th Street, in the residential district. But I remember my dad circling the office 3 or 4 times. And then after we located the office, he parked about 4 or 5 blocks away. And we walked back to the office. I said, why are you parking so far away? My dad said, oh, well, we need to exercise. So anyhow, we walked into the diagnostician, and it turned out to be a psychiatrist. So,
did you suspect at the time, like, he was driving around in circles because he was hesitant to bring you there?
Well, he didn't want to. He didn't want to be seen
going to a psychiatrist.
No, so he parked up 5 blocks away. We walked. So we sat in the office. I remember my dad was really nervous, waiting. And finally, after a few minutes, he said, "We need to go." So he took me by my hand. We left. He didn't. It was too much for him.
So you never went and saw the psychiatrist?
Huh?
You never.
No, I never saw the diagnostician.
The diagnostician. How old were you around that time? So the Colorado
trip? About, I guess, maybe 10.
And then around the same age when you went to see the diagnostician?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was after that, because I was literally, after spending 10 days confined in the car with my parents, constant criticism, I was just a nervous wreck.
What were they criticizing a 10-year-old about?
I tend to block things out because I don't even know, but it was whatever.
You remember it was not an enjoyable trip.
It was not an enjoyable trip.
When you came back, this is interesting because I'm not sure how much you know about my mental health history, but right around that same age, right around 10 years old, right around 5th grade, 6th grade, I started to develop really bad obsessive compulsive disorder.
Right.
And it was really bad middle school through high school, all the way up until my sophomore year of college. And I'm talking about incapacitating to the point where I couldn't read a book, I couldn't tie my shoes, those sorts of things, to the point where there were points in middle school or high school where I contemplated taking my own life.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like I was in control.
You couldn't take it anymore.
I couldn't control my own mind.
My symptoms, I guess, if I had to say anything, I was dizzy, which means I was anxious. Extreme anxiety,
right?
But I'm sure it's related,
right? I mean, you are my father, so it seems like that might be a genetic thing.
Could very well be.
Do you remember exhibiting any symptoms like that? Like, did you have any OCD behaviors, like having to check things?
Oh, I'm sure I do. Yeah, I've been diagnosed as OCD.
You have as well.
Okay. But it's suppressed now.
You don't experience any symptoms?
Not that I know of. I'm sure it's not that I know of, but it's not.
But because sometimes it can manifest itself in a good way. Like, you're pretty disciplined about waking up and going to the gym and things like that and maintaining a routine. And that's how I, in my adulthood, I've seen psychologists and I've seen psychiatrists. I've done my best, and obviously I'm a work in progress. But I've done my best to try to turn what was very much a negative, the OCD, throughout my life, into something positive.
Well, see, it's all in the decisions you make. Like, if I don't get up in the morning, the first thing I do, go to the gym, it's not going to get done.
Right.
I mean, I do it because I have to be structured, or it won't ever happen.
Right.
Like, with Preston's different. He said, I can't do that. I have to wait until I feel like doing it in order to go.
No, we need to get him in that same routine.
But no, he doesn't like it. I've tried it many times. I said, look, you need to make a list. This is what you do at this time. Just like you're going to class. You have a class at 10 and one at 1:30. This is what you do at 10 o'clock. And do it every day. You just have to change your habits. Or, I have to set a schedule and put things down, or things just don't get done. You know, I mean,
I'm the same way, man. This is why I wanted to do this interview, because I've never really known you my whole life, so it's crazy to hear you have similar traits.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the exact same way.
Yeah.
When I'm my healthiest and when I'm my best is when I'm when I have a very strict routine. And it starts, I lay the foundation for my day with physical fitness in the morning, and then right after that, something healthy and nutritious to eat. And that lays the foundation for me for a successful day and ultimately a successful life.
Well, same with me on my eating schedule. And I used to be where I would skip breakfast, I would skip lunch, and then just work myself until once everything was done, then I'd have a huge meal to reward myself.
Right.
But I went to a class. It was a lady in town whose husband was a doctor, and she had a health wellness class. And the thing about it was, the first thing, breakfast is your most important meal. You have to have a good breakfast, and then you have to have a good lunch, and then you have, you're not so hungry later on. So, but the purpose of the class was weight loss or just general health. And I guess I lost 30 pounds just changing my habits.
Oh, wow. When was this?
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, because I remember you being bigger. You seem more fit now.
Yeah, and see, Preston is a normally skinny kid.
Yeah, I remember. He was an athletic kid back in the day.
Yeah, but the thing about it, he doesn't make good choices.
Right. And also, there's complicating factors with his mental health and things like that as well. But yeah, I would like to work with him on developing more of a routine and healthy habits, honestly.
Well, see, another thing that concerns me about him in particular is that his mom was skinny, about Caroline's size. And
thin.
Yeah, thin. But then, after she started having mental issues, she, after we were divorced and all, she ended up being, I guess, between 400 and 500 pounds.
Wow. Because she was, and we'll get to your relationship with your first wife, Julia, who you're speaking of now, in a little bit, but she was, from what I understand, like, beautiful.
She was a model. She was a model. She was, I've put it this way. When we'd be traveling, and we'd be in a crowd or anything, when she'd go by, people would turn their heads.
Right. And she would make people do double takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, you told some story about, I guess when you were working with Specially Sound and going out to the Academy Awards, and someone pulling her aside to take...
No, we were at a party in Beverly Hills for MCA Records, and all of the artists were there: Jimmy Buffett, Steely Dan, Olivia Newton-John. But it was Olivia Newton-John. They were identical twins. It looked exactly like Olivia Newton-John. So Billboard magazine took pictures of them about which one is Olivia.
Oh, so took a picture of the two of them side by side?
Yeah, right.
And then put it in Billboard magazine?
Which one is Olivia?
With the caption, which one is Olivia? Wow, that's incredible. We need to find that picture. Okay, so let's go back chronologically. So, doesn't sound like it was the most harmonious relationship with your parents growing up then.
Well, I didn't see. I was the only one, so I didn't know any better. I just assumed that was normal.
You were an only child, so you didn't know any different.
I didn't know any different.
And it wasn't like you had neighbors right next door, like
no,
you
that
growing up
compare with or anything like that.
Right.
So, I didn't know any better.
Do you still harbor resentment towards your parents in the way you were raised?
I can't really say. Let's see. I was trying to think of something I wrote one time. I guess talking about when after my mom and dad died, and later on my dad died. People say, well, you don't know how you're going to feel when you lose a parent. And this was after my mom died. I said I wasn't sad and I wasn't glad. It just didn't matter to me one way or the other.
It was just a fact.
Mm-hmm. And then after my dad died, I said, well, I'm not glad. I'm not sad either. It just didn't matter to me one way or the other.
You were indifferent about the passing of both your parents?
Well, I didn't mean to be, but that's what happened.
That's how you felt?
Mm-hmm. But I didn't intentionally mean to feel that way.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was.
It's just your natural emotion. Wow. That's good to know. Okay, so let's go. Oh, academically in high school. How were you academically throughout school, throughout your, 1st through 12th grade? How did you do academically?
I didn't need to go to school. Everything that was presented to me, I knew already. It was amazing.
Where did that come from?
I have no idea. I know I learned to read by the time I was about 2.5, and I think I was fascinated with astronomy, and I knew everything about the solar system and everything by the time I was 3. I don't know. Neither one of my parents I don't get it from either one of them.
They didn't provide any instruction to you or anything? You didn't have any other tutoring?
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't need it. Now up about the 7th grade or so, then I started to learn things coming like algebra and things like that I've never been exposed to,
right.
That I had to learn just like anybody else. But anything else up until the 7th grade, already knew.
Right, so like the foundations of academia, right? So like reading, writing, basic arithmetic, basic science, principles of science, you knew.
Already knew.
So you could have started in 8th grade, you'd been good to go. So then what happened? Well, let's go back. I think music was clearly a major influence in your life, not only as a musician to begin with, but then later on you developed that as a business practice outside of actually playing music. When did your involvement with music and the development of that passion start?
Well, when I was a kid, I guess maybe in grade school or whatever, they used to advertise Hammond organ. Well, they had a thing, some kind of Hammond organ that was easy to play or whatever. And they whatever deal it was in Monroe said, okay, we'll send one out to your home for 2 weeks, no strings attached. So finally, I got my folks to have one sent over. That's great. And I said, I learned to play that thing in 2 weeks. I had the best time of my life.
Self-taught?
Huh?
Self-taught?
Well, it was called a Hammond chord organ, where it would play the chords for you. I mean, it was basically a very simplified way of playing a keyboard, an organ.
Okay.
Back for the time.
Okay.
And but anyhow, after the I said, man, this is great. This is what I really want to do. But then my folks had it sent back. They wouldn't let me keep it,
even though you were clearly enjoying it.
Yeah. They said I need to get out. It was they said it's just a sissy thing to do. You need to get outside and play.
Wow.
So,
how much of this, what's the word for it? Almost vitriol, it seems like, was coming from your mom versus your dad. Tell me if I'm wrong, but in my conversations with you prior a couple years ago, and then also with my siblings, Preston, Caroline, and Hugh Jr., Bubba, it seems like Mimi, your mom, my grandfather, was more of the domineering figure as opposed to your father, Papaw. Was that the case?
It was my mom who initiated whatever it is, and she would then instruct my dad what action needed to be taken.
So your mom was kind of setting the tone and then using your dad as
he was the vehicle to get it done.
Wow. Okay. Well, so then you started learning, I guess, in grade school music, and then you got a band together by the time during high school.
Well, I played in the high school band.
High school band, like typical.
And then I would really like in the band. I did band arrangements and stuff. I like to write music and do arrangements. So, but anyhow, when I was I guess a senior in high school. Make a long story short, just got a band together, and this was before. This was back in the
early '60s.
Early '60s, before music really started to happen.
Before rock and roll broke out.
Yeah, before rock and roll. So, but anyhow, we had a good time, and then when I got into college, I was very fortunate to get. I went to school in Monroe. Well, I had a couple of scholarships. Went to Tulane and went to University of.
So let's hop onto that more specifically. So we'll tie in the band stuff too. So you've got the band together in high school. Y'all played at the senior prom, things like that. You're playing, I guess, covers of popular songs at the time.
Oh yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Okay. And then what were your prospects? Once you graduated high school, what were you thinking about doing with your life? What were your college prospects?
I had 2 or 3 scholarships. One to the University of Michigan, one to Tulane, and one to maybe LSU. I don't remember what it was.
Was it for academics, for music?
Academic, well, both.
Okay.
Both. So, during that summer year, my mom, whatever my hope said, well, look, you need to start in Monroe, at northeastern Monroe.
Which is now the University of Monroe.
What it was, you don't need to be that far away from us.
Right.
So that's what happened there. But then the thing that kind of precipitated it was the fact that I was very lucky to get 4 other people who were just really good musicians. It was like, just really good luck. And we had a really, really good band. And this was the time when you can imagine all the bands around, but in the state of Louisiana, there were only 5 bands, and we were one of them.
Wow.
Only 5 bands. So we played 7 states: Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida.
Wow.
So we will try. We even if we play Friday and Saturday night, a lot of times we would have to charter a plane to go to one place and then fly to the next place. And the guy driving our truck would just have to drive all night.
Drive the equipment.
Yeah. And but we had a great time. But see, that's really the reason I never left to pursue any other schools, because we were we were on a roll.
Right. So once the band started being successful, it was like, all right, I got to stay here. And
yeah. No, not having the best time of my life, and so. But then, I don't know what. Of course, my parents didn't like it, but the thing with girls immediately changed.
Right, you got a successul band. I'm sure there's a lot of female options around.
Oh, you just don't know, Alex. You just don't know. You just take what you do. You take your pick out of who you want.
All right,
and that's all you did. And it was really a good time.
Must have been a fun time.
Uh-huh.
So, were you in college at the time? Were you still enrolled at ULM or at Northeast?
Absolutely. We'd only play on the weekends.
Okay, so you take class during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then either hop on the bus, truck, or hop on the plane during the weekends.
Do Friday and Saturday. Be back on Sunday for school the next week.
Who were these guys you were playing with? Were they from Columbia, from Monroe?
Oh, no. Let's see. Our guitar player was from Greenville, Mississippi. Organ player from Shreveport. So was the drummer, and our singer was from Memphis. But they were all going to school at college. At the same place.
Oh, at Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all all went to school together.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So do you have any stories from that time that you'd like to share?
Not really. I say. Well, I think.
Or general stories?
Well, with these people that are getting arrested, like Harvey Weinstein or whatever, Weinstein.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I don't know. But see, the thing about the attitude about stuff like that was so different then.
Right.
It was a whole lot different. I think, gosh, I remember one time we were playing the State Fair in Shreveport, and I had this little girl wanted to go back, wanted to go with us, go back home with us. And we did, and Morgan and I were living together at that time.
She wanted to come back to Monroe with you.
Oh, yeah, she wanted to come back to Monroe with us. So, really good-looking little girl. So, yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. And so she stayed with us about 3 or 4 days, and then for some reason, we said, you know, you need, we're going to put you on the bus back to Shreveport, because I just didn't feel right about it for some reason. And then when we got back to the apartment, the police were knocking on our door with the girl's father, and it seemed like the girl was 14 years old. Wow. So,
dang, dangerous time.
Uh-huh.
There's no Facebook back then to check to verify who she was.
No. Somewhere we were in Arkansas one night. Somehow when we were about to leave, the cops were ready for us, but I don't know what the deal was there. And then one time we had a guy we had played an Air Force base in Biloxi, and all of these things involve girls. But anyhow, when we got the next week, we had got a visit from an FBI agent. Something about the girl. I mean, it involved federal stuff. So, but I mean, we didn't do anything, and knowingly. But I mean, we just had several just kind of weird calls, all because of girls.
Right.
But you know, when you're playing and you get through and you have all these chicks just saying, "Hey, we want to go with you," or whatever, and you decide which one you want and let's take. I mean, not too much logic,
right,
is involved there.
Right. Especially as at the time?
It's done. I think done at the spur of the moment. And the thing about it, like I say, things were a whole lot. I mean, the atmosphere was just a whole lot different then. I mean, people don't criticize so much then or any then as people are now.
Right.
For doing stuff.
Right. So it definitely seems like your life changed a whole lot coming from this super overprotective Mimi and Papa Columbia lifestyle.
Changed a whole lot.
You got to ULM, you get a successful band, your life does a 180 and you're spreading your wings.
I am having a great time.
Was that kind of some of the fondest times of your life?
Among those, yeah.
Did it ever feel like it was too much?
No.
No? Mm-hmm. What was if you don't mind getting into it, what was the drug situation like back then? This is now mid to late 60s, right?
Well, it was...
a lot of psychedelic.
I never did really like to smoke pot, but I had LSD and opium and anything. I mean, whatever I didn't like needles, so I didn't,
no heroin.
I never did anything like that. But I mean, it's totally accepted.
But you're never a big pot guy? Never a big weed guy?
No.
Huh? That's interesting.
No, but but everything was totally okay.
Right.
It didn't matter.
Right. But there was plenty of partying going on.
Yeah.
Plenty of drinking.
Well, see, in the band, it's already a party.
Right.
And when you're playing.
Right. So what years was that? You got to ULM in '64. How long did the band stay together?
I probably 64. We played 7 years.
7 years, so '64 to
71, maybe.
And when did you graduate ULM? Or Northeast?
Probably 71. It probably took me 7 years to get through the study.
Right. What did you study? What did you end up getting a degree in?
Started in physics, but then another story. I got into business, and I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook. So then I started taking business courses, and my first degree was in marketing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Your first degree from ULM was in marketing.
In marketing. Right?
So yeah, let's get into the business. You Specialty Sound, right? Mm-hmm. Was the business that you started? Mm-hmm. Was this at the same time you were in the band?
Okay. Let me give you a...
Yeah, give me that story.
Okay. Back then, we all had to... If you wanted to buy a guitar or something like that, there was really one source. That was Sears and Roebuck. Okay. The Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Okay.
So that's where my first instrument came from, Sears and Roebuck. But music stores at the time, there were only two kinds of music stores: either a piano and organ dealer, or a band instrument dealer that sold trumpets and clarinets and things like that.
Traditional stuff.
Nothing where you could go in and buy a guitar or anything like it. Matter of fact, either the piano and organ dealer, people with coats and ties, like funeral directors, or the band instrument dealer really would want to cater to a long-haired type.
Right.
And that because that didn't look good.
Right.
Didn't come into the stores.
Right.
So,
can I have you move the foot off the table?
Yeah.
Trying to pick that up.
So, I'm trying to think. So the band kind of just, all of us needed to improve, get new instruments, whatever. And this is kind of a story in itself. Somehow, this was when the Beatles were just starting out. And they used guitar amplifiers called Vox, V-O-X, made in England. And they were distributed in the United States by the Thomas Organ Company in California. Mm-hmm. So somehow I got in touch with the Thomas Organ Company and didn't really lie to them. I just said I'm interested in carrying your line. Of Vox amplifiers. And I was living in the dorm Northeast at the time. So one day I get a call saying, "This is so-and-so with the Thomas Organ Company. I'm at the Monroe Airport. I'm looking in the phone directory for your business and I can't find it. Can you give me directions?" So I nearly freaked out.
You're living in the dorm.
I'm living in the dorm. So after I gave him a composure, I said, "Look, let me meet you at the airport." So I did, and I just left with the guy. I said, "Look, I'm in a band, and I was just trying to get some of your stuff." And believe it or not, he was really, really cool about it. He represented Thomas Organ, but Thomas Organ was also distributing the Vox guitars and amplifiers. And see, none of his piano and organ dealers wanted to touch the stuff because of the clientele it would draw. So, and he had a quota to set up so many dealers, and he wouldn't have any luck doing it. So he said, "Look, I'll work with you. If you can find a place to rent or something like this, just a hole in the wall, I'll work with you and get you set up." So that's how that happened.
That was the origin of Specialty Sound.
No, it wasn't Specialty Sound. We were dealing with a little electronic parts house where we'd buy microphones and things like that. So they let me set up. They gave me a corner of their store to let me set up some of my stuff because it would bring in people that would buy things of that. So I did. I did that. That was called CNO Electronics. So I call myself CNO Music Company. So I did that for a year or so. Then
is this your freshman year? Like, are you?
No. I was actually a sophomore in college.
So you were 19, 20 years old.
19 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did that, and then when we would play golf and play on the weekend, I had a friend who would watch the shop. So that went okay for a few months, and I had to move into another location.
So it's going well.
Yeah, it was going real well. And then, see what happened. Then that location, after a couple of years, that location they said, okay, you got 30 days, you need to move. We're selling the building or something. So we eventually built our store that exists now in 1971.
Okay, so right around the time you graduated.
The Specialty Sound as we know it. So another interesting thing that I said my guitar player was from Greenville, Mississippi. His brother David was going to Mississippi State, and his roommate there was a guy named Hartley Peavy, who today has Peavy Electronics. So from Meridian, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, my guitar player said, "Look, you need to really see look at some of these amplifiers that Hartley is building." And so anyhow, I became the first dealer ever for PV Electronics.
Wow, and that's
PV's first dealer, and they're the largest manufacturer in the world now.
Now they are?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
At Meridian, Mississippi, and I was their first dealer.
Wow.
But also, while I was in college, I guess, about 71, I guess, I was selected as Louisiana's Businessman of the Year.
Oh, yeah. Tell that story.
Yeah. Well, that's I don't know. That just happened. I don't think I tried. It wasn't anything that I did. It just happened. And I guess the bank that I was dealing with, they could nominate people to be through the Small Business Administration to nominate customers. So anyhow, they chose me.
What year was that?
I was in college.
Oh, wow.
So that was when I was in college.
So you Louisiana Small Business of the Year while being a college student, while
Playing in the band.
Wow. What was the band's name?
We were the Excuses.
What was your role in the band?
I played the bass guitar.
Played bass guitar. And so the Small Businessman of the Year, what did that entail? Like it was.
It was pretty good. You got a trip to the White House.
Oh, wow.
And things like that.
Did you meet the president?
Mm-hmm.
Who was president at the time?
Jimmy Carter.
Oh, wow. Probably not your favorite president.
Yeah.
My sister's favorite.
I didn't know any better.
Georgia boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's my younger sister, your daughter Morgan's favorite president, but I don't know how big of a fan people in Louisiana were of that guy. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. All right, so let's pick it up there then. So, Louisiana Small Business of the Year while you're in college. You graduate college in 71, kind of wrap the band up in 71. Now, around that time, early 70s, you are doing what your business now is special.
See, we started just doing guitars and amplifiers.
And the business is now is formalized as Specialty Sound.
Mm-hmm. And guitars and amplifiers. And we were, in other words, we filled a niche in the music industry that a piano and organ dealer and a banister dealer didn't. So we were a unique kind of new store. Matter of fact, we were the only store of its kind between Atlanta and Dallas and between New Orleans and Memphis.
Wow.
So we had a huge amount of customers from all directions coming.
Right, you had the South covered.
Yeah, and we had every, all the manufacturers would come to us, Gibson, Fender, it didn't matter, Martin Guitars, everybody wanted us to represent them. So we represented probably every line of musical instruments, guitars and amplifiers there were.
So that was the business model at the time. You were retailing musical equipment.
Yeah, and then that evolved. Because I'm trying to think how we got into it. Capitol Records. Somehow, the salesman for Capitol Records, Bill Newsom from Memphis, came into our store one day, and he said, we got to talking, and he said, hey, you ought to let me sell you some records and tapes. And so I did, and then at the same time, I said, well, I could do the same thing with Columbia and RCA and everybody. So I got hooked up with all the major record labels, and we became the biggest record dealer in anywhere. I mean, I guess in
the same region that you just referenced.
In the region, yeah. And then almost at the same time, then I get people coming in. This was like before stereo systems as we know it came about. A stereo system was a big piece of furniture like that with a record player and big speakers. But now they were coming out with a company called Pioneer, U.S. Pioneer, were coming out with receivers and turntables and cassette decks or whatever, and speakers and everything. So the guy from U.S. Pioneer wanted us to represent them, and it's completely different from musical instruments. So we did. So we started selling really good stereo and hi-fi equipment.
So this was a lucrative business at the time.
Well, I mean, we were the first. See, the thing about it, we were just lucky. We were the first to get into the guitars and amplifiers. We were the first to get into the records, and we were the first dealer anywhere that sold premium stereo equipment. So we just happened to be at the right place at the right time for everything.
And what year did you meet your first wife, the mother of your kids?
Okay. I was interviewing her to be a singer for a band. Probably.
You were auditioning her to be a singer for the band?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'd say probably around 1968, something like that.
1968. Mm-hmm. And then what point did y'all start dating?
Oh, well, just immediately after that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not sure what year I got married. It's early 70s sometime, 72, something like that.
And then you had your first kid, Hugh Jr., colloquially known as Bubba or Bub, in
78.
78.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you ever, did you want to have kids? Was ever your plan to have kids?
Well,
did she want to have kids?
I think probably we were married 12 years or so before we had any kids.
Yeah, because
she was actually involved in the business too, so we were really busy people.
So 68 through 78, that 10-year span, the first part of it, you're still in the band and in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys get married, and then together you're operating the store?
Yeah, along with about 20 other people.
Oh, wow. So you had 20 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were living in Monroe full time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Bub was born in 78.
Mm-hmm.
And then Caroline, your second child,
80.
Was born
18 months later.
18 months later. So
and then
back to back.
Then Braxton 18 minutes after that.
Oh, so back to back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that change life once the kids came in?
Not much. We travel a lot, and we would probably not only for conventions and trade shows and stuff like that, but once a month we try to take a trip to Jamaica or just some nice trip about once a month.
Just the two of you?
Mm-hmm. And then we started taking the kids with us. I mean, they were really good kids. We didn't have a problem with them.
When they were young kids, things were going smoothly.
No, they were just really good kids. They were just like adults.
And then at what point did things start going south with Julia, your first wife?
After probably Caroline was born.
And it wasn't. Were there any marital issues, or was it just her mental health started slipping?
She's my best friend, so I mean, none at all. She just started having and then when by the time Preston was born, she wouldn't even admit that she was pregnant.
When she was pregnant with Preston?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even when going into the delivery room, she wouldn't even admit she was pregnant.
Wow. So she had really started to lose it at that point.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that time?
I ain't doing good at all.
Yeah, because this is your best friend, the person you were in love with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? Was there a precipitating event, or
No.
it just happened?
It happened.
And then how long after that? So Preston was born in 82?
No, 81.
81?
Mm-hmm.
How long after that did she have to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital?
Probably within that year.
Wow. Just because her behavior was becoming so erratic?
Yeah.
What do you remember about her behavior at that
I
time?
don't want to think about it.
But it was clearly that she needed help.
Yeah, really bad.
So then you were left with the 3 kids on your own all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And you were living in Monroe at the time?
Monroe, right.
How long did you have the kids in Monroe by yourself?
Oh, probably a couple years.
Until you met my mom?
I did, but see, now this is something positive. My mom and Dad were so close. Now I did need them to help me.
Right.
I did need them.
Because you had 3 kids all of a sudden by yourself.
I mean, they didn't mind. They just loved that, so they were okay. But I will interject this. When one problem I had with my mom and dad, when I got my business, they would come up and at my store, and wouldn't leave. They would just stay there. And
both of them?
Right, and they would stay there. My mom would come up, put on a little sales clerk smock, and or if she wasn't there, she would deposit my dad there to be there all day. And I'd say, please leave. Wait, you need us. So you just don't realize it.
So you appreciated their help with the kids,
I did.
but not so much with the business. You had that covered. Was the business still doing well around that time?
Yeah.
Did having to your wife having to be institutionalized, did that affect it?
No. See, when my parents were coming up, that was before Julia was in the picture. So this was when I was first getting started, first couple of years.
Oh, okay, so prior to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't want to go into detail, but what was Julia's official diagnosis?
I really don't know. Her mother was schizophrenic, so I don't know. I've heard so many things. I can't really bipolar, or I don't think anybody really did.
Right, and she ended up being institutionalized for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Until 2010 when she passed.
Yeah, she ended up going into a nursing home, and like I said, she was between 400 and 500 pounds. She had to have, however you deal with somebody that big.
Right. What was her age related compared to you? Was she older or younger?
She was about, I think, 3 or 4 years. She's 5 years difference younger than me.
Okay. So talk about that time. That must have been a challenging time then after she had to be hospitalized and you have the kids and the business by yourself. What do you remember about that time? Were your parents playing a big role?
Really that big of a deal. I would take the kids today to the Methodist Church in Monroe had daycare. So I'd just take the 3 kids, drop them off before I went to work in the morning, and then pick them up in the afternoon, and they'd stay at my store and play until it was time to go home.
did they have school? Like school?
This was like, maybe all of them were 3 or 4,
Oh, this is before
5
kindergarten.
years old. No, one is school. Well, then even after school started, I would take Caroline and Preston to the Methodist church and take Bubba to whatever Lexington Elementary School and drop them off. So and pick them up in the afternoon and they play at the store.
So that's a good segue then, because isn't it at the Methodist church where they were going to daycare? Isn't that where you met my mom?
Exactly.
What do you remember about meeting my mom?
Well, she was really helpful with my kids. I mean, she would actually help me with the kids. So, I mean, she was a really big help for me.
Was she teaching Sunday school at the time?
I think she was doing Sunday school, nursery, things like that, helping with the, she always liked, take care of little kids.
Yeah, she loves children.
Yeah, so, all kinds of ways.
What do you remember about y'all, like, initiating a romantic relationship? Do you remember, like, asking her out on a date?
I can't really say that because we just became friends.
Okay.
She would help me, and we were just more friends.
Okay. And so this is, like, now mid-'80s?
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom at the time had a daughter from her first marriage, and that's Katie.
Okay.
And she was the same age as your middle daughter, Caroline.
Exactly. They were good friends.
Were they in school together?
They were in school together. They were best friends.
Okay. And so then you and my mom start dating, and my mom ends up pregnant in 87 with me. Mm-hmm. And then I was born in 88 at St. Francis Hospital. Mm-hmm. And then at that time, I'm assuming that was an unexpected pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And at that time, after I was born, my mom, were things not going well between the two of y'all?
No, I think your grandmother had moved to Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And so your mom got a job at Forsyth County Schools.
Uh-huh.
So
in Atlanta.
And
or
so
north of Atlanta.
we just all moved to Atlanta.
Okay. So y'all moved to Atlanta. But y'all, so this is, I'd like to hear you chime in on this. Mm-hmm. So I was under the impression my entire life, and this is my mom just trying to paint a rosy picture for me, I think. But I was under the impression my entire life that y'all were married. But y'all weren't married when I was born, or even when you moved to Atlanta, correct? You got married after?
Well, no. I'm trying to think because we got married in New Orleans. So that would have had to have been before we moved to Atlanta. To be honest with you, I'd have to sit down and map out that timeline because it seemed like I don't think we would have gotten married in New Orleans if we were living in Atlanta.
Right.
And it would have been before that.
But you weren't married when I was born?
No.
Okay. And then so you all moved to, so once I was born, my mom is now taking on like this motherly role with your 3 kids.
She had 4 kids.
She had 4 kids. Well, 5 once I was born. And then we all moved to Atlanta where my grandma was. And then you came with. What do you remember about that Atlanta time?
It was good. I've never been to never lived in a big town like that.
Right.
That's a great time.
Was it hard for you to leave your business? What was the status of the business at the time?
Somehow I phased out of the business. I ended up selling the store to one of my managers, and so that worked out. And it was a good time for me. I mean, I think your mom moving to Atlanta had something to do with me going ahead and hooking up with my manager and take the store. So it just kind of worked out.
How are you earning income in Atlanta? She was working as a psychologist, right, in Forsyth.
Oh, just odds and ends. Just not working for anybody, just doing self-employed kind of ventures.
Yeah, you've never been the type to have a boss.
No, I've never had a boss. I never worked for anybody.
Although I will, quick interjection here. Can you tell the story of being the French translator?
If I knew it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I'd heard some story from, I guess it's from my siblings or my mom, about something to do with being a French translator or something in Louisiana, some like bizarre.
I can't even speak French.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know that story.
Okay. All right. So, how long were y'all in Atlanta? Like a year and a half?
It wasn't long.
It wasn't long. And then, were things just not going
I
well?
don't know.
Did you want to move back?
I just remember one day I packed up. I had all my stuff in Atlanta, but the kids and I just packed up and came to Louisiana one day. And I'm sure we went back and forth, but I remember that. But I can't imagine how much stuff we could have gotten in, the three kids and me in a car.
Right. So you came back to Columbia to visit the grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then at that point, were you hoping that my mom would come as well?
I don't even know what the that was sort of a cloudy part of my life. I don't even know. So I can't really say anything one way or the other there.
But that was then the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As far as your relationship with my mom was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at that time when you had taken, this is around 90, I believe,
mm-hmm.
you had taken the kids back here to visit their grandparents, and y'all ended up just setting up shop here in Columbia. And then at that time my mom had gotten pregnant again, correct?
Mm-hmm.
With Morgan,
mm-hmm.
my younger sister, your youngest child. And then Morgan ended up being born in Atlanta, and you were here at the time with the kids?
I believe so.
Okay. What was it like? That must have been just a hectic time.
Mm-hmm. It really had. And that's the kind of things that you can't remember details about. It's just kind of a cloudy time.
Right. Right. So you were back here. What did you get back involved in professionally once you had left Atlanta and then moved back here with your first three kids?
Well, see, at the store, we started getting into professional commercial audio sound system, like for churches and schools and stuff like that. And I think probably we had at the time maybe 3,000 churches and schools we were doing business with, and the guy I sold my store to was just doing retail. He wasn't doing any type of professional stuff. So I just took my client base from Spatially Sound and started doing sound systems for commercial sound systems for schools and churches.
So you moved out of the retail environment and into sound installation. Mm-hmm. And that's been going ever since, off and on, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day?
Matter of fact, this is our 50th year.
For Spatially Sound?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
This year?
Mm-hmm.
Started
in 68.
18?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. So what was life like then when you're living here and me, Morgan, and my mom are living in Atlanta? How did you envision your relationship with us, and how did you think you were going to handle all that?
I didn't know. I literally didn't know.
You were just kind of winging it, trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I'll say this, and this is when we're going to get into like kind of emotional stuff for me. Growing up when I was a young child, when I would talk, it was just me and my mom. Mm-hmm. And like you said, with your parents, you didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in a single-parent household with my mom. I didn't really know any better. I always had friends around. I grew up in a suburb-type area, so it wasn't like I grew up in an isolated environment right here. So obviously I recognized that other families had both a mom and a dad, but honestly I didn't think any different of it. Mm-hmm. And I think I was incredibly fortunate that my mom was who she was. Because I think we can both agree she's an awesome mom.
Exactly.
She did an incredible job of raising, at that time, the three of us by ourselves. And my early conception of you, the first ideas I ever had of you was my mom telling me just questions I would ask about you. And she always painted a very bright picture of who you were. A very successful businessman, a very talented musician, a very talented cook. And I remember like, I guess in those early years, probably up, through elementary school, like idolizing you, this image of who you were. But to be quite honest, as I got into adolescence, middle school, high school, and college, I started, becoming a young man myself. I, had started to have my own romantic relationships, had my first conceptions of having my own family, and I started to develop resentment because I couldn't understand why it was that I was left alone without a father to grow up fatherless my entire life, and why my mom was left in this position to raise 3 young kids her entire life. However, that being said, part of the reason I'm sitting down with you today to do this interview is because now that I've, gone through my 20s, I'm now 30 years old, I'm trying to turn a new page in my life and trying to start a new chapter in my life. And I don't know exactly how it's happened, but I've started to let that resentment that I once held for you as a young man has now faded away. And as I kind of now go into adulthood, I feel kind of now as a 30-year-old man I feel like I'm just now becoming an adult. I feel like I really was a child throughout my 20s as well in a lot of ways. But now as I'm becoming an adult, I really want to let go of that resentment. And I want to develop a loving relationship and get to know you and allow that resentment to fade away and allow genuine love and harmony to develop amongst the two of us. And so that's kind of the impetus for doing these interviews. It's not only to get to know you, because I never got to really know your life story, which is part of what this is about, but also I feel like in order for me to develop into the man that I want to be in my life, and eventually the father that I genuinely want to be in my life, I want to develop a relationship with you. And I don't want any negativity or resentment to exist in my life with anyone, especially not the person who is half of who I am. So I just want to tell you that, yes, there were periods throughout my life, it's probably at least a decade-long period through adolescence and into my early, chronological adulthood, where I really did harbor ill will against you. Not that I wanted anything bad to happen to you, but I was angry that you weren't there to help me grow up. But I want to let you know now, that's not how I feel anymore.
Yeah.
And that going on for the rest of my life, I really do want to try to establish, and this is part of this establishment of this relationship right now, and then hopefully nurture a relationship going forward. So I just want to lay that out on the table that
Thank you.
I want to have more love in my life, not
Appreciate that.
not hate. All right, good. Let's continue on the story then. So, 88, you moved back, or I guess 90, you moved back here. Morgan is born. How has life been since then over the past almost 30 years? I guess take us first through like other romantic relationships that involved. You've been married since then, correct?
I have. That didn't work out.
It's kind of a story. And to be quite honest, both on my mom's side and on your side and on, I don't know how familiar you are with my mom's brothers, both on the Clark side of my family and on the Youngblood side of my family, marriage has never really quite worked out. Perhaps it would have worked out if Julia hadn't gotten sick between the two of you, but then if it had, I never would have existed. So maybe that was a little blessing in disguise. So yeah, take us through if in whatever detail you feel comfortable sharing, like your next romantic endeavors and your desire to get married again after my mom and things like that.
Really don't want to think about it.
Okay. So they weren't harmonious relationships,
No,
those next relationships. Do you have any desire to, like, at this point in your 70s, to, like, develop another meaningful, committed romantic relationship, or are you just kind of done at this point?
Reluctant.
You're reluctant. Why do you think that is? Do you think... It seems like Julia might have been the only romantic relationship you ever had that might have been destined for success. Do you think the fact that it ended the way it did, outside of your control, in kind of a sad way, has kind of influenced your other relationships going forward?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, so early 90s, you're running Specialty Sound. Were there any other professional endeavors that you got involved in aside from the sound installation?
No, not really.
Or things like that? No? What can you tell me about how your kids, the kids that you were raising, Preston, Caroline, and Hugh Jr., What were their lives like once they got back here to Columbia? How did they react to being back here?
Well, I think they pretty much liked it. They were well taken care of by my parents.
They had 3 parents essentially at that time.
Yeah, they're both here. So my parents took very good care of them, and and they're good kids. So I mean that's about all I can say.
Yeah. So Preston, the youngest, was like in 3rd grade. Caroline in 5th, and Hugh Jr. was like in 7th, 8th grade when they moved back here, and they grew up in this house the rest of their childhood.
Exactly.
Correct. Unfortunately, probably due in large part to the genetics they inherited from their mother, mental illness started to develop at some point. What do you remember about the onset of mental illness with your children?
Well, the only thing I saw was when Preston was in high school. I can't really be specific, but he had issues, and actually they went on, followed him to college at LSU,
Right.
and
he's really been dealing with mental health issues ever since.
he has. And I have to say, for Preston, he probably spent during his college years spent more time at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital than he did at LSU.
Right, at the the psychiatric hospital as opposed to the school.
But he continued to have that. But actually, one thing that is really a godsend is the fact he's always had to take medicine, pills. Is the fact they came out with an injection that he can take once a month.
Yeah.
And he does it willingly, and he has no problem whatsoever.
Right. Did Caroline or Hugh ever exhibit any signs of explicit mental illness?
Not during that time at all.
Okay. And then once Preston started to develop signs of mental illness, did that raise any alarm bells for you in terms of what you had experienced with his mother? Did you start to draw that connection or start to get scared?
Well, the doctor said each of you have a 1 in 4 chance. Your kids have 1 in 4 chance of picking up on their mother's illness.
And you had 3 of them, so one of them developed it. What do you remember about Preston and Bub specifically, their lifestyle in high school and I guess even in college in terms of like partying and drug use? Were you privy to that? Did they keep it behind the scenes?
Yeah, but I mean, like during the time, that wasn't anything out of the ordinary, with their peers.
Right.
I put it this way, both seemed normal.
Mm-hmm.
As far as everything that was going on.
Right. When I look at you having kids and I look at your development as a young man into adulthood, marrying Julia, it seems like you truly, like that was someone you truly loved and had fallen in love with. Mm-hmm. Did you ever envision yourself having kids? Was having kids ever a desire of yours? Because I know on my part it is, but I think that's probably because of the person that raised me, my mom, who was like this natural born mother, maternal figure who loves children. Did you ever envision having kids, or are they just something that kind of just happened?
It's something that happened.
Yeah.
I did. It wasn't anything that said, "Boy, I really got to do this."
It wasn't something you were trying to avoid.
No.
It wasn't something you were trying to
all.
make happen. They were just the result of romantic encounters. Yeah. Okay, so did you consider? And I would like to be as honest as you can in answering this question. Once you had us, because this is how I would envision it. If I were a successful young musician and young businessman, and all of a sudden kids popped up, I would almost look at it as like a ball and chain or something that was slowing me down. Did you look at the birth of your?
No, absolutely not. Matter of fact, from the time that say little Hugh was old enough to ride on my shoulders, he was helping me in my business.
Okay, so he was like a little partner.
All of them, Caroline.
Okay.
Everybody we were having a good time.
Okay. When I look at, how did you view, as me and Morgan were growing up, did you feel any sort of obligation to help support my mom or help my mom out in that sense, to raise us financially or otherwise?
I sure did every way I could at the time.
Right. Was there not a lot of finances to go around?
Well, for a time it wasn't. Yeah. And if I hadn't been, when I was trying to get things going, if I hadn't been living here with my mom and dad, it would have been tough.
Right.
So,
in terms of having the financial resources to do so.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, so Preston goes off to college in 2001. And so at that point you had everyone out of the house. Mm-hmm. Preston starts to develop some mental health issues around that time. Caroline is finishing up at LSU. At that point, Hugh Jr., your oldest son, had graduated Tulane. Did you ever have like any specific aspirations for them or what you wanted them to be? Did you want them involved in music? Did you ever provide them any like kind of try to gear them any sort of professional or academic direction? What were kind of like your hopes for them?
I really gave no direction. I said, whatever you want to do. I mean, it would be great.
Yeah. This is a tough topic. We brought it up last time, and I discussed it with Preston yesterday. The passing of your mom. What do you remember about that?
Well, it was in January. That morning, I had my mom was taking the kids to school, and at that point, the kids were little Hugh was at Tulane, so that was Caroline and Preston. And so she was taking them to school, and that morning I had gone, I think, to Winsboro for something. But it was real foggy, and they were crossing the railroad track, and the train hit them. I mean, they couldn't see the train, didn't blow a horn, they couldn't see the train. It just an unavoidable accident.
Right. So, yeah, for the listeners that don't know, we touched on this with Preston's interview, but there's a train track that runs parallel to the highway that kind of, there's a highway that splits our land.
I've crossed 10,000 times before.
Right. And so there's a highway that splits our land that runs from Monroe to Columbia, and then our land is on either side of it, and then there's a train track that parallels that highway. Mm-hmm. In order to enter our plantation, your home, mm-hmm. You have to cross over the tracks.
Exactly.
And so this morning, it was a super foggy morning, and the car was struck by the train. Mm-hmm. And what do you remember about being informed about that?
Well, I think at the time there weren't cell phones. I had a pager. So my dad, my dad paged me to call, and he called home. And he said, well, they've had an accident. The train hit the car. Caroline's okay. They've taken her to the hospital in West Monroe. But the other two, one is okay and the other one is dead.
Wow.
So that meant my mom.
But they didn't specify.
One is okay, one is dead.
But you weren't. They didn't specify who.
No, he said, "Come on back, and I'll tell you then."
Wow. And so you came home, and that's when you found out mm-hmm. that your mom had mm-hmm. died, and mm-hmm. your son and daughter had survived. Mm-hmm. And at the time, after that, Caroline was in the hospital for a significant amount of time. Correct?
For a month or so.
Right. Breast, fortunately, was able to walk away.
He just walked away.
But how much do you think that accident contributed to the onset of the psychological issues that he's had?
I don't think it had any effect.
Oh, really? You think that would happen regardless?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it was. Well, how did life change then? Because you were back here at the house. What was it like? What was it like being here without your mom?
Just my dad and I and Caroline and Preston.
How was Papaw? Your dad, was he different? How did he respond?
No, he was always the same. And actually, he didn't really express any emotion about it.
What about Preston and Caroline? How did they take it all?
Well, Caroline didn't know. She was, out of it in the hospital. Preston, I guess was okay. I mean, he, took it as it came,
Yeah. Did you notice any change in their emotional state or their behavior following the accident, Caroline and Preston?
Not really.
No. And then 4 years later, in 2010, your father passed away, correct? 2010?
Right.
And that was more of natural causes, more or less.
Yeah. He was 92, 93.
And how did that all happen? He had
Well, he, a couple years before, he had fallen and broken his hip. And he had been in rehab and in Columbia. And so one day, I think he got while he was in rehab, he I think got a urinary infection, and then the next day got pneumonia, and then he passed away.
Wow. So it all happened kind of quickly.
Mm-hmm. It did.
What was life like then? So then everything was kind of on you, right? Your parents are no longer there, and I guess Preston was out of the house at the time, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just you left alone here. Did that affect you at all?
Well, alone, but you have to understand, Caroline and Preston were both kind of around. They were in some. They were in school some. They were here some, and so Caroline. Let's see. Caroline had graduated from LSU, and by the way, she had. She didn't go to school to learn to paint. I think she graduated in French.
Yeah.
But she gave no inclination to wanting to paint.
Right.
I think her last semester at LSU, she took a class in beginning drawing, and as far as I know, that was the first time she'd ever picked up a paintbrush.
Wow. And now that's what she does, from what I understand, very successfully in Monroe.
Yeah.
Like she's earning a living.
After that, she went to worked on a master's at Syracuse University, and then finished a master's at Louisiana Tech.
Yeah. And now she works as an artist. Like,
right. It's sort of like being a musician. You could try to be a musician, an artist all your life, and be the most talented person in the world and never make it. But she has, and she hadn't really. She had no real direction in doing that.
Yeah, she's making it happen.
Yeah,
I'm super proud of her. It's incredible to see, like,
big time.
Yeah, like someone's painting for a living.
Big time, like a rock star.
Yeah, exactly. The equivalent of what you were kind of doing, so for visual art. Mm-hmm. So I remember coming to Papa's funeral, and I would like some clarity on this, because this has just been a mess, and I've heard 1,000 different things. Mm-hmm. What happened with Papa's inheritance?
Well, I don't know.
He had left you money. He had left the grandkids money, including myself and my younger sister. Mm-hmm. But it seemed, I remember coming here for the funeral, it just being like a big mess and a big argument. I remember getting really upset at one point in Mimi and Papa's bedroom, because it seemed to me that we were bickering over how the money was going to be divided.
Think about it, it's unfortunate, because it was just an emotional time anyhow.
Yeah.
And then it was just one of those bad emotional times it was just bad. And and it didn't have to be, but it just was.
Right. Mm-hmm. Was there any pushback from your children about how much you were receiving versus how much we were receiving?
It just settled down. After that, everything's okay.
How did it all get settled out? Was it what was followed in the will? How did that all get broken down?
Well, I think that however it was, I'm trying to think how it was. Each kid got a certain amount, and then I got the house, So I mean, it was whatever it was set up in the
all the house and the land was given to you.
Yeah, and then the kids were given certain
right. What I had understood at the time, and I at that point I just threw up my hand because I didn't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was under the impression that it was 50% was to you in terms of just like monetary liquid assets, and then 50% of the monetary liquid assets was to be divided amongst the five kids. Right. Is that what ended up happening?
That's what I understand. Yeah.
And is that what was spelled out in his?
Yeah, that's what whatever he specified in his
right. How? So since then, you've been here. Breston moved back after college. Mm-hmm. How has life been since then with Breston in the house? How do you view that time, this kind of past decade?
Well, see, a lot of times Caroline was here too. While she was finishing up Louisiana Tech, she was living here too.
Right.
So it was basically Caroline, Breston, and I. And then eventually, when Caroline set up her studio in Monroe, just Breston and I here, and there was before he started, Breston started getting his shot. Things were chaotic,
right?
Very, very chaotic, and he was in and out of the hospital several times.
He had to be institutionalized several times for his erratic behavior.
Yeah, but since he's past couple of years, since he's been getting a monthly injection, he's perfectly okay. Right. Well, for the most part.
He's a different kind of cat.
Yeah, he's just different. So anyhow, he's just himself.
But for the most part, over the last few years,
normal himself.
There haven't been any major episodes.
No, not at all.
Like that. How, kind of just going back real quick, I had something I'd written down in my notes here. How would you compare Julia and my mom, those two different relationships? Were they two completely different individuals? Were there any similarities amongst them?
Nothing similar at all.
Really?
Nothing similar at all.
Was Julia kind of more of a wild child?
No, not really, but she... see, the thing about it is the environment of everything when we were married was, we did a lot of traveling. We had to do a lot of stuff. And see, by the time your mom and I got married, all that calmed down, and there was no stuff, really.
Yeah, my mom certainly wasn't going to encourage that.
No stuff. So it was a different thing for me too, just because everything was quiet. Mm-hmm. And when Julia and I were married, nothing was quiet. Everything was just a good time. Just fun times.
How was she as a mother? Was there ever a period before she got sick that you really got to see her as a mother?
Oh, she was a great mother.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but eventually...
It was a great mother, and it's not really her fault. It's just like, if somebody that gets cancer or diabetes or something like that, the illness kind of takes a toll on the person.
Right.
So that's... I don't blame her.
No, I wasn't suggesting that at all. I'd never
she's a great mother.
Cool. How do you view your relationship with your children now? What would you like to see your relationship with your children as you enter old age and as they enter adulthood? How do you view your relationship with your kids?
Well, of course, he's in Washington. He's... I'd just like to see everybody together more.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this feels like everyone's kind of dispersed.
Yeah.
And then how do you view specifically Caroline? It seems like she has had to distance herself from this side of the family to undergo her own recovery process. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's it, and I hate to see it because I miss her, but she really doesn't. She really distances herself.
Yeah.
And but I miss her.
Yeah.
I wish the process would go ahead and complete itself so we could be a family again.
Yeah. So do I. And a big reason I'm
But and the thing about it, it's I do get to enjoy. She'll go to concerts with me and stuff like that.
So you do get to spend some time with her.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Get to spend time, but she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to go any further than that.
Right. She doesn't want to make it a regular part of her life. As we kind of wrap up here, talk about. So I mentioned that growing up, my mom always spoke very highly of you as a talented individual. But she also warned me constantly of substance use and the fact that it was in my blood from this side of the family, the potential for addiction. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I didn't take a sip of alcohol, try a single drug, roll a single joint until college. Mm-hmm. That being said, over the last 10 years of my life, I've partied pretty hard.
Well,
I've over the last 10 years, once I got out of my mom's household, once I was no longer under my mom's roof, I have had no hesitance to consume alcohol or to really try any drug that's put in front of me.
You and I are very much alike because same way for different reasons. When I was before I went to college, you and I were the same way, But after went to college, and things kind of loosened up for different reasons. But the thing about you, Alex, you're so disciplined. You can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And you take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never had an issue like giving it up. Mm-hmm. I've certainly never had an issue with alcohol in terms of like a feeling of dependence. However, I will say this. Over the last 2 years is the first time in my life where it's not an addiction, but I do feel I have developed a dependence on marijuana. And I think in large part the reason for that was because of also what I referenced earlier, the OCD symptoms that are developed in adolescence. Eventually I was medicated for that, put on an antidepressant to help deal with the OCD symptoms in college. There have been times in my mid and late 20s that I've attempted to go off the antidepressants, and it did not go well. The only other substance I've found that helps me deal with the symptoms of OCD or to bring the kind of tranquility to my mind that antidepressants do is my use of marijuana. So I have found over the last 2 years that there'll be periods of my life that I'll go through where I'll be smoking weed every single night.
See, isn't that the medicinal use of marijuana, isn't that one of the things that it benefits?
Yeah, I don't know. That's something I'm struggling with, honestly, now.
Look,
should I accept this as like a medicinal use, or should I try to work away from using this as a crutch
and be miserable?
Right. I don't know. I don't know. Or is there other ways for me to manage my own mind without?
You'll find that out. But as long as I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. If you find something that I have the same problem with anxiety occasionally or depression or something like that. They just come and go, and if something that makes you feel better, as long as you can say yes or no, or I don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay. What struggles have you had with substance abuse and addiction or dependence on substances?
I'm sure I've just been times in my life where I just went overboard.
Yeah.
And I know I have, but I've reached a point of saying, I can say yes or no. Mm-hmm. And you have the same tendency. You are so structured. You can order your life where you can say, make good decisions. It's all in making good decisions.
Mm-hmm. What role do you think your substance use played in the downfall of yours and my mom's relationship?
I'm sure it had a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
because see, I was coming from the environment of before our marriage of everything goes, and I was just used to that.
Right.
And your mom is
The exact opposite.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm sure that had a whole lot to do with it.
Yeah, I bet it did. Mm-hmm. All right, let me check my notes here real quick. There's some last few questions I had, I feel like. Okay, kids. Are there other kids? Do you have other children that we don't know about? Aside from the five of us, Caroline, Breston, Bub, me, and Morgan?
None that I don't know about. None have been identified.
Because your first three siblings, Bub and Breston specifically, have discussed that with me. But I don't know how much of that is paranoid delusion, how much of that is drug use. I don't know.
Well, I don't. I'll put it this way: nobody has ever come forth and say, "Hey, you're my dad."
What about Jonathan?
That's Julia's kid with the guy she was in the mental institution with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Jonathan is not our kid.
No. And then there's another little girl, same father. That's Jonathan's sister. Both of them, same father.
So Julia's child with a different guy.
Yeah, but father of both of those children.
The same father.
Same father.
Okay.
As far as I know.
As far as you know. And they were born while she was institutionalized? Okay. Two more things I can know. When you met my mom, had you met someone like that before in Monroe? Was she a unique figure in Monroe?
Well,
it seems I just can't envision my mom in Monroe.
No, not unique. She was just different. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way. She was just different. Just like any other two people are different.
What attracted you to her?
Well, I think we were friends, and she was attracted to my kids, and I think that was kind of it,
You were looking. She played an excellent motherly role.
Oh yeah, she did. Yeah, she more or less just stepped right in when Jew was there and became the kid's mom.
Right. Last time we talked, I asked you about some of the happiest times of your life and some of the most difficult times of your life. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that this was now 3 years ago, that around that time was one of the more difficult times of your life. I think this is around beginning of 2015. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel that way? Do you feel...
No, see, a lot of that was because of having to deal with Breston's mental illness.
Okay.
It was very difficult. Especially just he and I.
Right.
But that's calmed down. I mean, like I say, he just brushed him out. He's got crazy.
Right. So you feel now currently this isn't like one of the more difficult times of your life?
No, not at all.
Okay. And then what do you want for yourself for the rest of your life? What would you like to accomplish? What would you like to do? Who would you like to be as a man going forward for the rest of your life?
Haven't given that thought.
All right. Mm-hmm. How about for your children?
Keep on doing what they're doing.
Okay. What about those children that maybe aren't going... Do you think any of your children are going down the wrong path?
Well, Hugh is. But this is the first time I've seen it. He's either on something or not on something that he needs to be on.
All right, well, thank you very much for doing this.
Well, thank you, Alex. You're very professional.
I'm trying to be. I'm hoping this is kind of my...
You are. You're very impressive.
Thank you. And like I said, throughout my adolescence and early adulthood, I harbored ill will toward you, and I don't want that to be the case anymore. Okay. I don't want to nurture resentment. I want to nurture love. So I'm hoping that this interview and me sitting down to get to know you can be the start of a new relationship for us.
Sounds good to me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, Mr. Bell.